the Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United out of Long Beach with special guests. And so I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then I'm going to hand the mic to them because I want the special guests to be acknowledged because they come from a very long way. So let me just start here by saying, again, thank you for attending our first Ethnic Studies Conference. So glad to see the community here. Everyone vibing with us. And we please give some applause and welcome to the Garifuna American Heritage Foundation.
Thank you for having me here tonight. So my name is Cheryl Morales. I am the founder and president of Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United, which was formed in 2005. It came from the necessity out of the 2000 census. We were forced to be put in a bubble. We were either courted by the African American community that said we had to identify as Black, which meant that we gave up our identity as Garifuna people. But our ancestors fought too hard for us to give up that identity. So, and then we had the other part of the Hispanic culture, because we are now exiled in the Central American communities, which is predominantly Spanish. They told us, no, even though you're Black, you have to identify as Latino. And so with that said, why would I identify, no offense to anybody, why would I identify as anybody else as a second-class citizen when I'm a first-class Garifuna? Yeah. My ancestors fought too hard for our identity. When Columbus discovered or stumbled across, they knew our name. They knew us by name. They knew our indigenous name was Kalinagu. They started to call us Caribs, then Black Caribs, then Yellow Caribs, then Red Caribs. But we had a name for ourselves, and it was Kalina, singular, Kalinagu, plural. And now today we call ourselves Garifuna. So it was important for us to maintain our identity as Garifuna. So in 2002, what we did in our communities here in Los Angeles and throughout the diaspora, we created t-shirts that said Black, Hispanic, other, writing Garifuna. So we did that. We did that during the 2000 census. We did that in every census ever since to try to promote. Because when you look at the census, we're just there hidden, but you don't know who we are. And when it comes to funding, we get nothing. After we've identified either as Black or Hispanic, and the way that they wanted to divide us, if you were a Garifuna person from an English-speaking country, you were supposed to be Afro, whatever, and then put whatever. And if you're from a Latino-speaking country, you're supposed to put Hispanic. So where did the number of Garifuna people come? You never have an accurate number, because we're always this undercounted, underserved community to this day. The homeland of the Garifuna people is called Yurume in our native language. It means land of the blessed in our language. In our native language, however, today it is known as St. Vincent, which is the Lesser Antilles. St. Vincent has been inhabited for more than 7,000 years. 7,000 years. Okay? First by the Siboney, the Lokono, who they call Arawaks, but their indigenous name is Lokono. Kalinagu, which is us. Caribs is what the white people named us. From along the Orinoco Delta. Throughout history, we were originally known as Kalinagu. The Europeans named us Caribs. Today we are known as Garifuna, singular, and Garinagu, plural. The Kalinagu Carib territory stretched over 500 miles, from Grenada, Tobago, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Antigua, St. Christopher. Trinidad and Barbados were Arawak territories. The Kalina would often form unions with the Lokono tribe, who later inhabited neighboring Dominica. According to my mentor, Diana Ifuakan Vidal, to conquer and divide the tribes, the Europeans fabricated the story that the Kalina men would slaughter the Lokono men, kidnap the women, and make them their wives. Unfortunately, this is one of the many disparaging stories the Europeans would make up throughout the history about indigenous people. The picture is of Mansu Musa, who inherited the throne and ruled Mali Empire after King Abubakar abdicated his throne in 1311 to explore the ocean. According to historians, Abubakar said, "You can have the land, I will conquer the sea." So with that said, There were two currents that go from Africa, and it naturally comes and flows into the Western Americas. So there's many writings, whether or not people want to debate that, if it is accurate or not, but we believe that we came here. This is our ancestors. The Mandinka people of the Mali Empire made voyages to America in 1310 and 1311. The first expedition left with 200 ships of supplies and men, material, food, and water. On the first journey, only one returned. And they, went ahead and they told their report to Abubakari that, hey, they set off. We turned around because according to history, they were scared, so they didn't go all the way. They just turned around. But Abubakari had faith, and he knew that there was something out there. He knew that the world was not, flat. So he continued on. 1311, he set the second expedition with 1,000 ships of supplies, and it's important to note, 1,000 ships of just men. Just men, okay? The ancient oral history of Garifuna people states, King Mansa Abubakari, with ships of men and supplies, arrived to the shores of St. Vincent. The African men later took native women as their wives, and it's through that union that the Garifuna people race was born. This is a picture of the men in their indigenous traditional garments and adornments. Garifuna people are mixed race people who are descendants of indigenous Afro-Caribbeans, including the Lokono, Kalina, and African explorers from Mali. When I shared this picture throughout my presentations, they're like, oh wow, they're Black. Because unfortunately, when you think about Native American, it's been kind of whitewashed, not just here in the United States, but also in Central America. When you think of Mayans, sometimes, they're like, we want to see a Mayan, and you have a Mayan over here, and they're like, oh, you look dark, because they're expecting to see a more clearer skinned Mayan, and that's the same thing when it comes to indigenous people throughout the world. They're expecting to see a lighter skinned indigenous person, but this is what our indigenous people in St. Vincent look like today. This gentleman here is the current chief in St. Vincent. Hundreds of years later, the Europeans arrived and began to occupy the Carib territories. The Europeans would seek to divide and conquer the indigenous people and their homeland by labeling them Black Caribs, the dark skin tone, yellow Caribs, the pale skin tone, and the red Caribs, fair skin tone, whom the Europeans considered having no African features. To gain legal access to the Garifuna land, the Europeans went even further by stating that the Black Caribs were escaped slaves to avoid their indigenous land rights. The wars fought were always about land rights. The ancestors fought for their right to live in relative peace, as they did before the invasion and occupation of their lands. Also, they helped escaped slaves who sought freedom and found refuge amongst them. I want you to focus on this cannon. Now, at most forts, the cannon is pointed outwards to protect the sea.
Towards the ocean.
Towards the ocean. This, however, is pointed inland towards the Garifuna villages. To this day, if you go to Dorshire Hill, these cannons are still pointed inwards to the Garifuna villages. It was an eerie sight to see that at my ancestors' homeland, that these cannons were pointed toward our villages, aiming to kill us and to eradicate us. Next slide. The increased presence of the Europeans and their illegal land grabbing would lead to 150 years of battle. You think we're giving up that land without a fight? Again, 150 years of battle. When I get to this point, people are always like, well, how did you guys fight them? They had muskets and you guys had like arrows and things like that. But we knew nature. We knew nature. We knew that certain plants, if you dip the tip with certain elements, it was being used.
Poison.
It was poison.
Mhm.
If you dip it with certain elements, it would kill you. So we knew which plants to utilize to continue to fight them for 150 years. One of the things that Garifuna people were good at doing was they knew how to hide, they knew how to camouflage, they knew their land. So they were able to just use the natural resources of their land to defeat the Europeans for over 150 years. In Christopher Taylor's book, The Black Caribs, unbeknown to the Caribs of St. Vincent, their land had been granted by King Charles to the Earl in 1627, together with all of its inhabitants. The many treaties signed were violated by the British, including the Peace Treaty on March 31st, 1660. This is the peace treaty which granted Dominica and St. Vincent the land of the Garifuna people, Kaliniku people, which was never supposed to be touched. Well, you think they violated that? And the first Carib War was from 1772 to 1773. Mind you, we had many battles in between that. And the second Carib War was from 1795 to 1797. This is our Chief Joseph Chatier over here, and these are the 15 chiefs that accompanied him to sign, one of the many treaties that they did with the Europeans over many, many centuries. This is a war medal that they would give. Is the Carib War medal that was given to anybody who killed a Garifuna person. It's at the Army Museum in the United Kingdom. And when we talk about divide and conquer, mentioned earlier that Garifuna people also helped escape slaves. So what they did was they would gather their slaves and tell them, hey, you help us catch these people, and we'll give you an award, we'll give you land in exchange for turning against your fellow man. So whether it was a European or a Creole person who's what they call now, I believe in Belize, they refer to themselves as Black English. If you're a Black English, you would also get this award for killing a Garifuna or a Carib. According to the archives, the British intentionally went from calling the Caribs of St. Vincent to referring to them as Black Caribs around 1760. At a council meeting dated May 10, 1769, the attendees discussed drafting a militia bill against the Black Caribs. In Julia John Kim's writing, The Caribs of St. Vincent and Indigenous Resistance During the Age of Revolution, the British turned in the late 18th century to a strategy of renaming the Caribs of St. Vincent the Black Caribs and attributed primarily African origin. This was basically to get our land. Again, land rights. What for? Sugar estate, for their sugar plantation. So if you justify that we were escaped slaves, we had no indigenous land rights. We had no claim to the land. So that was the number one thing of why they categorized us as Black Caribs and not indigenous in order to grab our land for their plantation. Between October, this is about the Garifuna genocide and the exile from UMA. Between October 1796 and March 1797, an estimated 4,338 to 5,200 Black Caribs were captured and imprisoned on a barren island known as Belize. The exact number of captured, tortured, imprisoned Garifuna varies according to the different sources. When we went to Belize in 2019, it's still barren. There's no food there. It's very rugged terrain. It's a very hard existence there. And we were imprisoned there for over 18 months without any food, left to fend for ourselves. But according to our ancestors, of course, our brothers from the surrounding areas knew how to reach that place, and they would come and give us food. According to records, around 2,400 Black Caribs died of rare disease, including yellow fever on Belize. Garifuna oral historians narrate that Garifuna people were poisoned with arsenic on Beliso and on board the transport ship. The British had no intention of the exiled Garifuna to arrive to their destination alive. Because we were charged for defending our land, our indigenous land. We were charged with treason against the British crown, sentenced to death. But according to the British, they have sympathy for us. So instead of killing us all off, like half the population they did in Beliso, they said they would exile the rest of us who remained. So that's what they did. The surviving Garifuna were transferred from Beliso to Bekwa. Prisoners were embarked onto 11 vessels, made up of their ancient experiment, warship with twin cannons, Games ship, Boynton ship, Ritu ship. I like to get to my favorite one, Prince William Harry. We left Bekwa on Saturday, March 11, 1797. That was the last time we saw our homeland. That was the last time. Some Garifuna remained and they went into the mountains. And those who remained were forced to basically give up their identity, their language. Like Ronnie spoke of earlier, those Kalinikus who remain on St. Vincent today do not speak the language. They do not have the culture. They are absolutely lost when it comes to their identity. And we're trying to reacculturate them, by bringing in our resources, our knowledge, our language, and try to just reacculturate them the best way that we can. It was not until 1797 when the British Empire, along with the support of American fleets, who came from Louisiana and went to St. Vincent to help to defeat us. You won't hear that in American history books, right? It was not until 1797 when the British Empire, along with the support of American fleets, did they defeat the Garifuna people. Okay? The Garifuna people were charged again with treason against the British Empire. They were placed on an island prison called Beliso, later exiled. Families were separated by the arbitrary color of their skin. Within the same family and tribes, they were randomly assigned black, red, yellow carob labels. This is a picture of my family. When we were young, and my father and mother would sit us down to give us the Garifuna history, one of the things that we made into a game that our parents would say, who would you stay with? Who would you go with? Who would you, who would you want to go with you? So my dad and my mom would be like, because you see the various hues. And they would ask each of us, who would you go with? Because my dad was like, I would get chipped. My mom was like, I would stay. They would probably, say I'm a yellow carrot or whatever. And so they would ask my sisters, because again, we're various hues. And then they're like, okay, who do you love the most? Who would you stay with? Who would you go with? And I played that same game when it was time for me to share the Garifuna oral history with my kids. These are both my kids. And I would ask them, okay, my husband and my son are gonna stay on the island. But me and my daughter had to make a decision, or they had to make a decision. Would they come with us or would they stay? Because my son would probably be considered a yellow carrot. No, he would probably be considered a red carrot, my daughter a yellow carrot, and of course I would be a black carrot. So arbitrary, they would just separate the family. And the same thing my mother did with her grandchildren, my son over there, my mom, she would play that game with our son. And she was like, okay, our son name is Isani. Okay, Isani, are you gonna go with grandma or are you gonna stay with your dad? So that was one of the ways that we taught the history of what happened to our ancestors in St. Vincent. The Garifuna people first arrived in Port Royal off the coast of Roatan, Honduras on April 12, 1797, after being exiled by the British from their homeland, Uruguay. Garifuna people lived primarily in Honduras for over 30 years before venturing off to other Central American countries. Garifuna arrived in Guatemala around 1802 under the leadership of Marcos Sanchez Diaz. The first documented arrival of Garifuna in Belize was in 1804, although there is speculation that a small group arrived earlier. In 1832, a mass exodus of Garifuna fled Honduras under the leadership of Alejo Beni. During these years, 1865 to 1870, Garifuna migrated to Nicaragua, Port Lagoon, Garifuna people started to migrate to the United States in the early 1950s, working with the then United Fruit Company. A brief historical account of Garifuna history in Los Angeles. The first migration of the Garifuna people in the United States has been documented since the early 1950s. According to the oral history, many Garifuna people from throughout Central America worked for the then United Fruit Company in Guatemala. These well-paid laborers would later migrate to New Orleans, Chicago, New York, Miami, Houston, and Los Angeles. The second wave of migration was during World War II, with the recruiting of contracted laborers from Central America, including Garifuna men, to harvest crops. Many laborers seized on the opportunity to remain in the United States and later sought ways to bring their family and friends to join them. The population of Garifuna people living throughout California is estimated to be around 100,000, with the largest community centered in Los Angeles and being from Belize. Although New York has the largest and the most diverse population of Garifuna outside of Central America, estimated to be about 200,000 or so. Next slide. Garifuna life in Los Angeles. Garifuna people are notorious for being independent and do not like to be told what to do. They don't like to be questioned or having to explain themselves. However, when it comes to social and communal gatherings, they will travel far and wide for weddings, funerals, traditional spiritual healing ceremonies, and random festivities. Here in Los Angeles, we celebrate the Garifuna Settlement Day for Belize, November 19th. Annually, we have huge celebrations throughout Los Angeles. We celebrate Garifuna Heritage Month. Garifuna Day in Guatemala is celebrated here on the 26th. April 12th is International Garifuna Arrival Day in Honduras, which is also observed throughout the Garifuna communities all over in the United States. Adigada Hani is a traditional family and communal to symbolically put food down for our ancestors. This is something that we do here also on a monthly basis. When Argo Dance, which you will see a demonstration of later, is done on Christmas Day at New York. It's a community event. Next slide. Keeping the culture alive. We continue to keep our culture alive through traditional and modern Garifuna music, socializing traditional gatherings. Our community emphasizes the importance of transmitting the culture to the next generation. We always try to include our young people in all of our cultural gatherings and our spiritual gatherings. And this is the concert that we had in 2018, where we blocked 48th and Hoover down in South Los Angeles, and we had a great Garifuna festival. This is our language, our Garifuna native language. Who wants to learn a little bit of Garifuna? Okay, you want to go with me? Okay, first of all, how many letters do you see up there? Okay, you'll repeat after me. Garunati.
Garunati.
Ba.
Ba.
Sha.
Cha.
Da.
Da.
Gayumati.
Gayumati.
Ba.
Fa.
Ga.
Ga.
Ha.
Ha.
Gagriti.
Gagriti.
Ka.
Ka.
La.
La.
Ma.
Ma.
Na.
Na.
Nya.
Nya.
Garati.
Gararati.
Pa.
Pa.
Ra.
Ra.
Sa.
Sa.
Ta.
Ta.
Maguti.
Maguti.
Gaguti.
Gaguti.
Wa.
Wa.
Ya.
Ya.
Yay! Give yourself a hand. Good job. So Garifuna is our Arakan language. It is also a verb, subject, and object language. And on May 18th, 2001, the United Nations Educational, Science, and Culture Organization proclaimed Garifuna an endangered language and culture.
Woo.
In 2005, Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United opened the Garifuna Language and Culture Academy at various locations. Unfortunately, the school closed due to lack of funding in 2011, although we have continued to have virtual presence via our Gahfu YouTube channel and other social media platforms. Our traditional spirituality, this is the Buyapa, a Garifuna temple. You will find similar temples in Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize. And the rituals that we do is symbolically feeding, bathing, and dressing our ancestors. Like I was saying earlier, once a month here in Los Angeles, we have a communal gathering to pray, set food for our ancestors, and eat with our ancestors and so forth. In fact, we're having one this weekend, and it's for the community to heal and just to remember who we are, to remember our ancestors. That's done once a month here in the Los Angeles area. Next slide. Garifuna culinary. Our traditional Garifuna foods keeps us connected as people because no matter what occasion, our food is a reminder of who we are. The ingredients, taste, and our gastronomy are inherited from our ancestors. The recipes of our ancestral food have withstood the time, having lived in exile for 227 years. On any given weekend, someone is always selling traditional Garifuna food. On the upper slide, this is a traditional dish called bundiga. It is grated green banana with coconut milk and with fish. Yum, yum, yum. The first picture at the bottom over here in the plate is a cassava bread. That is our daily bread. It's made out of yuca. We call it arepa. We make a bread out of it and we eat it basically every single day. The next product is also made out of yuca. It's a sweet cassava tamale. We wrap it like a tamale in banana leaves. We boil it and it comes out like this. It's sweet. It's so good. One of my favorite things. This is a cassava cake, which we bake like a cake, but it's made out of cassava. Not cassava flour, it's just made out of cassava. We grate the cassava, we put our nutmeg, cinnamon, and coconut milk in, and we bake it. And it comes out like that, very delicious. Next slide. So, this is one of our proudest moments in 2014. We petitioned the city of Los Angeles to recognize the month of November as Garifuna Heritage Month, and they did. And we were proud as a Garifuna to be, again, seen for who we were. And if you go to Crenshaw and Olympic, I believe, you'll see this billboard there right now. I speak Garifuna. We are here. This is one of the many things that we try to do. We try to make sure that we are seen. Garifuna Glow is our identity and our way of life. And we just want to make sure that you know that we're here. And we're proud to be Garifuna. I'll say it in my language. Garifuna Nukia. Panten Pinala. I am Garifuna and I am proud. 1984 Olympics. Garifuna history. The Garifuna people were part of the welcoming committee in the 1984 Olympics. Most people didn't know who these people were. And they're just like, hey, Caribbean people. But this group was known as the Preservation of Garifuna Culture Incorporated, decided by Petillo Suazo from Honduras. And it was important for us. He had connections with, a lot of city officials. And it was important for us to be part of this history, to be part of the Olympic, and to show up as Garifuna, and to be seen as Garifuna. And we beat our drums like Garifuna. We dance like Garifuna. And this is that history. Now I'm going to pass on the mic to Ronnie, so he could introduce our special guest from Guatemala.
Yes, a very interesting information. Did you guys like it?
Yes.
It was amazing. We get emotional because there's a lot of good stuff to learn. So, vamos a invitar aquí a nuestros compañeros delegados que vinieron desde Guatemala, desde la Boga Livingston. Es una comunidad garífuna muy colorida en Guatemala. Al profesor Elmer Mauricio Enríquez, por favor, a su hermana Amy Enríquez, también a Randy Baltasar y también a la licenciada Nora. Bienvenidos. Lo que vamos a hacer es de que el profesor, vamos a empezar con Amy. Ella se especializa en el arte culinario garífuna, nos va a hablar un poco acerca de eso y también del turismo, que es muy importante. I'm sorry. Let me say that in English, and then they will be talking in Spanish. So they come from a delegation from La Buga Livingston, which is a very colorful Garifuna community, which was founded in 1802. Amy is going to talk about what she specializes in, which is Garifuna culinary art and, of course, tourism. And then the professor is going to talk about the state of Garifuna people today in Livingston. And then we'll move on to Randy and Licenciada Nora. So let's get started.
Sereme. Bitiguño, onwebo, gundo nuago, la wanajala farin hamuru suhuma.
Buenas noches a todos. Felices de estar aquí esta noche. Gracias.
Sí, mi nombre es Zoraida Ime Enríquez Bermúdez y estoy muy contenta por estar compartiendo el día de hoy aquí con ustedes. Parte de mi especialidad también es que soy
I
docente.
am happy to be here. I am going to share some great information for you. I'm trying to catch up, so hacer las oraciones cortas para que lo atrasen.
Soy docente, me especialicé en dar clases en el idioma garífuna.
I am a teacher. My specialty is in teaching Garifuna.
Debido a que los casos de las personas que ya no hablan garífuna son alarmantes.
Due to the fact that it is an alarming trend that a lot of people are not speaking the language anymore.
Nos hemos dado cuenta que dentro de nuestra comunidad
We have realized that within our community,
es más fácil expresarnos en el idioma materno.
it is a lot easier to communicate in our native language.
Y debido a eso es que estoy interesada en continuar trabajando
Due to that, I have a commitment to work,
en seguir capacitando a los niños y por lo mismo hemos exigido que las capacitaciones y procesos de formación
in teaching children in the process of developing their knowledge.
contemos con una persona que esté interpretando de manera simultánea,
So that we could simultaneously translate.
ya que de esa manera es más fácil que el mensaje llegue.
This is the way that we believe that the message will be captured.
Por lo tanto, estamos buscando siempre documentar
Therefore, we're trying to document
toda la información para que las futuras generaciones que nos siguen
all the information that we could capture so that the future generation that will follow,
siempre tengan dónde buscar la información.
they will find it right away.
Y con este material se pueden apoyar para poder hacerlo.
This is part of the material that we're promoting so that we're able to preserve the language.
Y mi mensaje a todas las madres que tienen niños en casa, que sean hablantes garífuna,
And all of the mothers or parents who have children at home who have to teach their children
poder apoyarse de estas herramientas.
and use this teaching tool to share the language.
Será venía un lao hagamba hanina guñole, awajaretia luba forma guarguecate.
Gracias a todos por ese mensaje y qué más dice porque ahí sí no entendí. Muy avanzado, Garifuna.
Estamos dispuestos a apoyarles en lo que necesiten. Si tienen alguna duda, aquí estamos.
Seré menea. Gracias.
Bitiguño,
Buenas noches.
buenas noches, good evening. Mi nombre es Elmer Mauricio Enríquez, originario de La Buga, Livingston, en Guatemala.
I am originally from Livingston, a Garifuna town in Guatemala.
Para mí es un gusto estar acá, agradecido con Ronnie Figueroa y con señora Sherry, de igual forma con doctora Amena por los contactos, por estar acá.
I am very glad to be here this evening. Thanks to the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, my wife Cheryl, Dr. Humphrey, for allowing me to be here as part of this important event.
Para mí es histórico estar acá, acompañado con el licenciado Nora Hernández, Randy Baltasar y mi hermana Aime Enríquez, para poder venir y conversar con ustedes sobre un importante pueblo, que es el pueblo Garifuna,
This
en un
is,
recóndito.
this is a historic event. Un poquito corto porque es muy largo. This is a historic event. This is basically something that I cherish a lot, and I thank you for allowing me to be here with my team. He mentioned his sister Amy, Randy Baltasar, and of course Ms. Nora Hernández.
Pues déjeme contarle que escuché la exposición de señora Cheryl, magistral.
I was taken aback about the presentation that Cheryl did.
Por el pueblo garífuna. Venimos desde las islas de San Vicente, tal como ella lo dice.
Everything that she shared can be proven, because it's not only oral history that she kept emphasizing, but it's also written history that you can find in a lot of books.
Me compete hablar por parte del pueblo garífuna de Guatemala. Estamos ubicados cerca de Belice.
I am here to talk about the Garifuna people of Guatemala. We are located right next to the country of Belize.
Guiados por el mayor en ese entonces, Marcos Sánchez Díaz, en 1802.
Y fuimos fundados, we were founded by Marcos Sánchez Díaz in 1802.
Pues somos ricos en la gastronomía garífuna, variedad de gastronomía garífuna, tal como lo exponía la señora Cheryl.
We have a very rich gastronomical, how would you say, variety of food that we enjoy.
En turismo, que es nuestra principal fuente en Livingston, Izabal, una pequeña comunidad donde pues cohabitan varias culturas y es un atractivo turístico que hoy por hoy pues está atravesando por una situación no buena.
Tourism happens to be the #1 income for a lot of our people. Europeans come, Americans come, a lot of researchers come to research about Garifuna people and also about the Mayan people, but the majority of people who come there looking for Garifuna, basically.
En cuanto al idioma, podemos acotar, tal como lo decía mi hermana, se está trabajando bastante para poder mantenerlo.
As for the language, we're working very hard, like my sister was saying, so that we are able to document our language.
Hemos trabajado por nuestra parte estos materiales para el aprendizaje del idioma. Algunos tienen traducción al inglés y los demás no, pero sí seguimos trabajando duro para poder mantenerlo y que la cultura pueda prevalecer, no solamente en el idioma, sino que en la gastronomía, en turismo y en todo lo que pueda mantenerse para no perderla.
Part of documenting this is because, of course, you know already, we want to be able to preserve the language and to pass it on to our children. That's the only way that could actually save the language from extinction, because it's already determined that it's disappearing, you know, because their children go to school in a Spanish-speaking school. So the language is only acquired when they're at home, and there's no written or anything. So for anyone like me, I feel fortunate because I am able to read, and I know basically how to break down Garifuna. But then the native speakers don't know that, you know, because they only learn it from.
Como cultura estamos trabajando bastante para la no discriminación, porque también vivimos la discriminación en Guatemala. Creo que es a nivel mundial, pero lo vivimos allá, de hecho que somos la minoría en ese país.
We are also fighting against discrimination, and as a matter of fact, there is a presidential, he was once in Guatemala named the presidential commissioner for anti-racism, defending the people of Guatemala, the Garifuna people of Guatemala.
Por mi parte, antes de cerrar mi intervención, podemos hablar sobre la parte migratoria con licenciada Nora Hernández. Estoy agradecido por estar acá. No ha sido fácil, pero hicimos todos los esfuerzos para poder acompañarles y poder conocerles y platicar con ustedes. En este momento le toca el tema a la licenciada para hablar sobre la discriminación y el problema que afronta el pueblo garífuna en este tema.
Mr.
Gracias.
Hernandez is going to focus on migration and also some of the laws that apply.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Nora Hernandez. Muy contenta, muy complacida de estar acá con ustedes.
I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Yo soy guatemalteca
I am
también.
Guatemalan.
Como les repito, muy contenta de estar acá con ustedes. Yo soy psicóloga y
She's a psychologist.
actualmente he realizado varias consultorías a favor de los pueblos indígenas de Guatemala.
I
Y
have,
Perdón.
I have done a lot of work in regards to ¿trabajo de qué?
a favor de los pueblos indígenas. de
In
acá.
pro of the indigenous people of Guatemala. Now,
Actualmente estoy trabajando con la comunidad garífuna de acá de Guatemala.
at this moment, I am working with the Garifuna in Guatemala.
He estado apoyando el material que ustedes ven acá, el diccionario trilingüe realizado por el profesor.
I have been supporting this material here written by Mr. Enriquez.
Este diccionario actualmente pues lo estamos tratando, ¿verdad?, del Ministerio de Educación de Guatemala.
We're trying to lobby our way through the Ministry of ¿el Ministerio de qué? De Educación.
Del Ministerio de
Through
Educación.
the Ministry of Education in Guatemala to be able for them to actually take these as part of their tools for maintaining and teaching the language.
Para que pueda prevalecer el idioma garífuna.
Ya lo dije.
Bueno, yo creo que vamos a cerrar, ya casi todo lo dijo Mr. Cherry.
Ya Cheryl dijo ya la mayoría. She already mentioned the majority of what pertains to Garifuna.
Nuestros hermanos garífunas guatemaltecos han migrado acá a Estados Unidos,
A lot of Garinagu from Guatemala have migrated into the United States,
a New York, Ángeles, California,
New York, LA,
otros países, España,
other countries such
Inglaterra,
as Spain, England,
Canadá,
Canada,
Inglaterra.
and England.
¿Por qué han emigrado de Guatemala para acá?
Why
Well,
have they migrated?
Han emigrado más que todo por problemas económicos, por problemas por la situación que vive en nuestro país, por eso han tenido la necesidad.
They have migrated due to economic issues and of course a lot of the issues that have been going on in Guatemala, of course with discrimination and not having opportunities to go to school and get educated.
En el año 1970 fue cuando se dieron cuenta de la migración de nuestros hermanos garífunas a los diferentes países, especialmente acá en Estados Unidos.
In 1970 is when the government of Guatemala realized that there was a lot of migration of Garifuna people into New York and Los Angeles.
Vendiendo especialmente sus tierras
They were selling their land
para poder migrar y dejar algo a sus familias que dejaron en Guatemala.
to be able to have the money to pay for the trip from Guatemala to the United States and leave their families behind.
Únicamente, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.